the summer sun. Life has just begun for you. Like a bird in flight, spread your wings, fly high. Open up the gates, rid yourself of chains, yeah. Time to rise and shine, find the royal way. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. Da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da,
Thank you very much indeed to Ian McGillivray. Of course, you remember that Freedom Camoy was the song that opened the hugely successful 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Now it's time for the announcement of the National Office Bearer election results, and I invite our Returning Officer and Acting General Secretary Chris McElhenney to announce them.
Good morning, Conference. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to Greenock Town Hall. As Interim General Secretary of the party, it has been my responsibility to facilitate the inaugural election of office bearers to the first ever elected National Executive of the Alba party. After the close of this morning's session, as a delegate you will receive electronically via email your ballot for the election of ordinary members of the National Executive Committee. Please check your emails, and if you are having any difficulty, please don't hesitate to go to the front desk and ask for assistance. Now to the election of the National Office Bearer elections. Firstly, I would like to thank the Conference Chair, Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh, for chairing the very well attended Deputy Leadership and National Office Bearer hustings. Further, I would like to thank all our candidates for the positive manner in which they have participated in this process. They very much have been a credit to our party. And now to the results. For the position of National Organisation Convener, there was only one candidate. Therefore, Stevie Graham is elected unopposed. For the position of National Women's Convener, there was only one candidate. Therefore, Councillor Caroline McAllister is elected unopposed. For the position of National Equalities Convener, first preference votes were cast as follows: Suzanne Blackley 263, Eva Comrie 716, Mercy Camania 98. Therefore, Eva Comrie was elected at stage 1. For the position of Membership Support Convener, first preference votes were cast as follows: Delia Henry 415, Corey Wilson 625. Therefore, Corey Wilson was elected at stage 1. For the position of Local Government Convener, first preference votes were cast as follows: Mike McKenzie 400, Brian Topping 241, Lee Wilson 351. Therefore, at stage 2, Mike McKenzie was elected. Now for the party leadership positions. There was only one nominee for the position of party leader. Therefore, it is my great pleasure to announce that Alex Salmond is elected unopposed as leader of the Alba party. Conference. For the position of Deputy Leader, first preference votes were cast as follows: Councillor Michelle Ferns 323, Kenny McCaskill MP 837. Therefore, Kenny McCaskill MP is duly elected as Deputy Leader of Alba Party. I shall now pass back to Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh to commence our policy debates, and finally I wish everyone in attendance a magnificent weekend in my home, Inverclyde.
Thank you very much indeed. And we now move to the substantive agenda and motion number 2, entitled Independence Convention. And I'd like to invite Kenny McCaskill to propose the motion. As Kenny is coming to the stage, the motion will be seconded by Corey Wilson.
Friends, it's right that the first substantive debate at the first ever Alba Party conference is on independence. It's what motivates us, it's a cause that drives us, and it's a dream that shall never die. While others may prevaricate or forget, we never will. Nor will we wish for Indy or await recovery before pursuing it. For we know that without independence, there can be no recovery. So I thank you for keeping the dream alive and our cause on course. Independence has never been more needed. The plight of so many in our land so desperate. As the SNP Green Cabinet expands, sadly it mirrors that of queues at food banks, dole offices and all the other signs of grinding poverty. A poverty that hasn't come about by chance or misfortune, but through political choice. Austerity is a policy foisted on our people, and it's they who are paying the price, not politicians. All this in a land blessed with bounty from off its shores. First oil and gas, which transformed Norway while Scotland was impoverished before its very eyes. Now it's offshore wind and renewables that beckon off our shores. But the jobs are missing, and the benefit to communities and country is likewise absent. That's why the time to push for independence is now. Our people are threatened by austerity and our Parliament is threatened by a power grab. It's why steps must be taken forthwith, not deferred to the never ever. It's our people's need and it's our nation's right. Mandate after mandate has been given to Scotland's government to act. The electoral basis and the constitutional changes exist. It is time. No more must we be told to wait, nor must we be told it's dependent on Boris Johnson's consent, or that its timescale can be set by him. Scotland has comprehensively rejected him, as they have every Conservative Prime Minister since before I was even born. Seeking a gold-plated referendum from this Tory party has as much chance of success as a hungry orphan pleading for more in Dickens' Oliver Twist. It's neither his right nor prerogative to reject demands, as Charles Stewart Parnell said, "No man can fix the march of a nation." And to paraphrase the late Canon Kenyon Wright, he may say no, but we are the people, and we say yes. If our request is denied, then we must act now, not cower or flee. All and every democratic channel must be pursued. Political pressure needs applied, not Westminster diktat supinely accepted. Stamping feet, waving order papers, or offering empty rhetoric are all entirely inadequate. Leadership and courage need shown. Sadly, they've been absent for far too long. Legal options, forsworn if not opposed by the Scottish Government, need taken, and in all and every court. Diplomatic and international appeals must be made, and in the court that matters most, that of Scottish public opinion, there must be action. Rather than expecting our people to endure with equanimity, we must mobilise them, showing the support that exists for our cause. Scotland's seeking change and independence is the key. Getting rid of the Tories, and especially this kleptocracy, which is their nadir, not just once, but forever. Protecting our cherished institutions, like the NHS, from privatisation. Ridding our land of weapons of mass destruction and becoming a nation once again. All this needs done as we run into yet another electoral contest next year. There, local services must be protected, and from Holyrood, central diktat as much as Westminster actions. But more importantly, the cause of independence must once again be put to our people. Unlike in December 2019, when an opportunity for a convention was passed up, this time it must be held. Then it should have been the basis for protecting our people from Johnson and his regime. Now it must be the catalyst for independence. Friends, in 2014 we fell just short, but a remarkable result was achieved given the forces raigned against us. Now Britain has never been weaker, yet the strength of our cause never greater. The opportunity to deliver our country's independence lies before us. Let others turn and flee. Alba will stand fast. Scotland will be free. I move the motion.
Thank you very much indeed, Kenny. I now call our newly elected membership convener, Corey Wilson, to second the motion.
Good morning, delegates, and I can't tell you how absolutely delighted I am to be here and see you all in real life and get this party kick-started again. And, you know, I think for me, I've almost forgotten what it's like to talk about independence, to debate independence, to come together with a plan for independence. And I know that this is going to be the party that has that plan, and every single one of you in this room, and also those that couldn't attend today, will be part of that plan. And as you heard earlier on, nearly all our LACUs are up and running across the country, and I have met with many people during that time, and there is just so much energy, there is so much expertise, there is so much campaigning expertise out there that we can absolutely hit the ground running. And of course, we've got the elections in May coming on, and I think that will be another stamp under our belt, if you like, and we can make really good inroads in May, which will again will affirm the fact that we are here, we're here to stay, and we're going to be fighting for independence for every part of our being, because that's what we're all about. I look forward to working with all of you going forward, and I know we're going to leave here tomorrow full of energy and vibrancy, just ready to get out there, hit the doorsteps, hit the campaign trail, because we have a lot to offer. And independence, we are the only party that's pushing for it, and we're going to make sure it happens. I would like to second the motion.
I'd now like to invite Neil Hanby MP to speak in favour of the motion. Please welcome Neil.
Thanks, Tasmina. Sorry I'm moving so slowly, folks. I had a steroid injection into my hip yesterday. It wasn't the most pleasant experience of my life, but talking to you about independence certainly is a big improvement on that. Here we are, and I know why I got involved in politics when I returned to Scotland. It was the cause of independence, and it was a catalyst of the Tories getting back into government on the back of the assistance at the Lib Dems. And I just had this absolute overwhelming epiphany that we must extract ourselves from the United Kingdom. We must protect our country from the policies that we have now witnessed over the last 10 years of austerity, and now find ourselves in the extraordinary position where we have a Conservative government that has a policy of not just cuts, but taxation. So we're not in a tax and spend Labour Party, we're in a tax and cut Conservative grip. And it really is so important that we do not kick the can down the road, and we do not allow those who have the responsibility to deliver independence to kick that can down the road. We need to hold them to account properly. Thanks, Conference. Independence is not a destination. It's not the only objective. Independence is a state. Independence is a sense of purpose. It's the launchpad for all of those ambitions that we share for our country and for our people. And if you take the notion of the energy of our people and the energy of our country, all of that energy is currently finding its revenue stream ending up in the Treasury in London. We saw it with oil, and we're now seeing it being siphoned off down to Redcar. It's landed in Kenny's constituency, by the way, but it then heads straight down south. None of the investment, none of the jobs, contracts for difference locks out that conditionality of local employment. So I have constituents who look out on the wind turbines off the Fife Coast who cannot get employment in that industry. That's simply not good enough, and the Scottish Government are as responsible for their timidity as the UK Government are for their greed. And the use of that energy is not just for its own purposes. It's about improving the dignity and the equality and the prospects of the people of Scotland. That's why I fight for it. That's why I am here today, and why I will stand up against pernicious bills like the UK Internal Markets Bill, the cut to working tax credits and universal credits, and the increase of national insurance on some of the poorest paid people in Scotland to fund the disinvestment that the Tories visited on their own social care system over the 10 years of austerity. So I go back to what I was saying at the beginning. Independence is not an event, it's a state. It's an opportunity for us to build a better country. And if others who are charged with the mandate to take that forward will not make the case, then we will and we must.
Thank you very much indeed, Neil. There are no cards in against, so I'm going to call our final speaker, Christina Hendry, to speak in favour of the motion.
So, first of all, just to say I completely agree with everything that Neil said. Independence is what we need right now. It shouldn't be independence after recovery from the pandemic. It should be independence to recover from the pandemic. For me, especially, it's also about supporting our children and young people, and we can only do that with independence and all the powers we get from independence. The past few years have been hard for everybody in Scotland. But I think especially our children and young people are facing uncertainty with the future, and there's many difficulties around mental health. And I just don't think Westminster and the Tories are the ones who are going to put these young people first. I think it's only with independence that we can really listen to young people, we can really change things in our education, we can change our mental health services, and we can support everybody as best we can in order to fully recover from the pandemic in a way that's best for Scotland and all of Scotland's people, and that's why I fully support this motion.
Delegates, as you've seen, as I was speaking, there was one final card passed to me to speak in favour of the motion, and so I'll call our final speaker, who will be Tommy Sheridan.
Sorry, Tasmania, you caught me by surprise there, so apologise for the delay in getting to the podium. Brothers and sisters, delegates, what a pleasure it is to come to a conference and hear the leaders of the Party of Independence call for the mobilisation of the people for independence. It is with great pleasure that you listen to Alex and Kenny, who moved this motion, making the point that it's not enough to be for independence. We have to build for independence. We have to win the arguments. You see, the party that has unfortunately left the scene, that party perhaps missed the advice of the likes of Michael Foot when talking about his own party, the Labour Party, when he said that it was a crusade or it was nothing. The SNP, in my opinion, is a cause or it is nothing. And unfortunately, they have abandoned that cause. This party has to fill the vacuum that the SNP has left. That not by being in any way aggressive or in any way opposing ordinary good members of the SNP, supporters of the SNP, people who voted SNP like me, not because I was a member, but because I believed they were the political leadership of the independence cause. Brothers and sisters, we now have to be that political leadership. And I would therefore appeal to each and every one of you. Please help us mobilise. Next Saturday in Glasgow, there is going to be a display of hate, of bigotry, of sectarianism, when 34 marches from the Orange Order parade through the city and spew nothing but divisive hate and bile. That rancid cause
is one choice. That's the past. On the Sunday, Hope Over Fear is assembling in Glasgow, and we appeal to each and every one of you to come and to show the new vision, the new cause of an inclusive Scotland, of a welcoming Scotland, of a Scotland that is for everyone, and a Scotland that doesn't have hate in its heart. It has love, it has cooperation, and it has human solidarity. Please be in Glasgow next Sunday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Tommy, and there are no cards in against. Can I ask then motion number 2 on the Independence Convention and Alba Party's demand to urgently advance independence is passed by acclaim? Thank you, delegates. We now move to item number 3, strengthening Scotland's institutions. You'll note behind me we have our motions in Gaelic as well as English, and thanks to Josh Robertson for arranging that. This motion is to be moved by George Kerrivan and seconded by David Henry. Thank you.
Fellow nationalists, it's so wonderful to be able to say fellow nationalists and know that you are. Motion number 3 is a step towards embedding the values that Alba wants to express to the Scottish people. And chief amongst those values is our commitment to democracy and to grassroots, bottom-up democracy, not top-down government. A generation ago, we had the Scottish Constitutional Convention. There were debates about what it achieved, but its central vision was to create a Scottish Parliament based on a Scottish cultural norm of democracy. The democracy that we learned in the churches, the democracy we learned in our trade union branches, the democracy of local councils like this one. Democracy from the bottom up. Not the pseudo-democracy, the fake democracy of Westminster, which is elitist, which is patronising, which is a camouflage for rule by an elite, which is opposed to and discourages everything that the people want. What we need to do in all our politics and in the vision that we are creating of a new Scotland is to recover that view of a grassroots democracy that's always been core to Scotland's values. But what have we got after 20 years of Holyrood? The executive has taken control. The very thing that the Scottish Constitutional Convention wanted to avoid. We are now run by an executive, indeed an executive fused with his own party apparatus, something that Stalin would have been proud of. We now have government by special advisor, not government of the people. And we all know who those special advisors are. We have also now seen patronage, Westminster patronage, beginning to flower at Holyrood. We now have committee after committee, commission after commission appointed, not elected. And who is being appointed? The new Economics Advisory Panel has Nicholas Macpherson, the head of the Treasury who led the fake news attack on ourselves and on independence in the 2014 referendum. Why? Why is Nicholas Macpherson now advising the Scottish Government? What a shame. How far have we fallen from the ideals of the Constitutional Convention? Fellow nationalists, this motion recommits us to grassroots democracy. One of the things that means, let me tell you, is that we give power away from the centre to the base and the grassroots. And that means one thing is more power for local authorities. Local authorities have had power and money taken away from them as power was centralised to Holyrood. We now need to turn power back to the people, and that's one thing that Alba commits itself to. Finally, nationalists, where has this centralisation of power eventually taken us to? This week we discovered that the ability of ordinary citizens to demonstrate in front of their parliament is being taken away from them. The corporate body of the Parliament, Scottish Parliament, has gone to Priti Patel and the Home Office to get powers to allow the police to determine who can and who cannot demonstrate and call on their representatives. Exactly. I hope that cry of shame comes up from all over Scotland. We will not allow our ability to demonstrate and talk to and redress our MSPs. We'll not allow that to be taken away from us. Finally, we want independence, but the independence is to create a Scotland that's free and democratic. The reason why a certain political party and a certain political leadership does not really convince any of us that it's true to independence is because it's given up fighting for democracy. It's more concerned with preserving the powers of the executive. Fellow nationalists, Alba is here to lead the fight for freedom, but for democracy. Freedom and democracy together. Fellow nationalists, that's what we're fighting for.
Thank you very much indeed, George. I now invite David Henry of Edinburgh Local Authority Campaign Unit to second the motion. David Henry.
It's been a long time since I stood in a room like this. In fact, it was 2017 when I made a speech at the SNP's conference. And that was when I think everything went downhill from then on. A couple of interesting facts about our institutions and what will happen when Scotland becomes independent, which should be very soon, I hope. I wanted to check I'm in the right room and at the right conference. So I have a question. What do we want? When do we want it? I am in the right place. In Scotland, we have approximately 7,000 civil servants. Denmark, which has a similar population size, has 50,000. After Scotland is independent, we will need many more new civil servants to replace the top-down approach from Westminster. And it should be, I think, part of our policy, and that is what we're asking for you to support here, that those jobs are spread evenly and across all sections of society across Scotland. So I didn't write this speech, by the way. I only agreed to do this a few minutes ago. Support the resolution and conference. Let's have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, David. I have no further cards and there's no cards in against, so can I ask conference's motion number 3 is passed by acclaim? We now move on to motion number 4, establishment of an Independence and Democracy Committee. This was to be proposed as detailed by Laurie Flynn, who's a party founder. Unfortunately, Laurie has taken unwell and won't be able to join us at conference. So if you'll kindly agree, I'm going to ask the seconder, Sarah Sawyers, to propose the motion, which you can only do if I have somebody from conference to agree to second the motion. Can I have a seconder, please, from the floor? Yes, thank you very much indeed. Sarah Sawyers to propose the motion. Sarah. Sarah will be followed by Josh Robertson to speak in favour of the motion. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi. Well, I'm tempted to say how disappointed I am to be standing here, but that's not what I mean. I'm just disappointed that Laurie isn't here to make his usual eloquent and beautiful case for the wealth of Scotland. This motion actually began with a series, and I hope you'll forgive me if I run over a little. I've had to kind of combine what I thought Laurie would be saying with what I planned to say.
Sarah, can I just ask for the agreement of conference that, given Sarah speaking for two people, that'd be allowed? Thank you very much indeed.
This motion actually began with a series of conversations between Laurie and I, starting about April this year, about something that most of us are very familiar with, but whose nature and scope is still debated. That is the constitutional sovereignty of the Scottish people. And I think it's worth taking a moment to remind ourselves of what that is. The disposition of governmental power in the kingdoms of Scotland and England up to and after the Treaty of Union have always been and remain wholly incompatible. In England, from the 11th century at least, the constitutional model has been feudal. Someone at the top of the pyramid owned the land and everything on it, down to the last chicken. We know that from the Doomsday Book. Power, privilege and rights trickled down through the social hierarchy, never quite reaching the common man or woman at the bottom. When the English Parliament enacted the Bill of Rights in 1689, it replaced the absolutism of the monarch with the absolutism of a parliament, which has supreme jurisdiction supreme authority in every jurisdiction, including the rights of the individual, and against whose statutes there exists no right of appeal. Does that sound familiar? In Scotland, the original model was Celtic, a circle with the chief at the centre, appointed by election and bound by oath and by tradition to act in the interests of his people and his land. From the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320, which asserted that King Robert the Bruce would be removed if he failed in his duty to the people and to the land, to the claim of right in 1689 deposing James VII on the grounds that he had broken his oaths and his faith with the people, and did, by the advice of wicked and evil counsellors, invade the fundamental constitution of this kingdom and altered it from a legal limited monarchy to an arbitrary despotic power. Scotland's constitution enshrined the principle that power is vested in the community of the realm and only delegated or loaned to the monarch or government. By the way, this concept of popular sovereignty was such anathema to the English upper classes in the 16th century that George Buchanan's work on the power of Scottish government was banned in England and burned publicly in Oxford. The Scottish principle was practically heresy in a country built on the feudal model. I mean, imagine the ignorant common man believing that power ultimately resided with him, or that kings are not the source of power, but merely its representatives. What a notion. But that was our notion. And more than a notion, a binding legal fact. So what has happened to that binding legal fact? The Acts of Union, which ratified the Treaty of Union, did not dissolve the Scottish Parliament and admit it into the English one. They dissolved both parliaments and created an entirely new legal entity, albeit housed in Westminster. Scotland no more inherited England's laws than England inherited Scotland's. But it has been the English notion of constitutional power that has characterised Westminster's dealings with Scotland. But how can such absolute power, created by an act of an English Parliament, past 2 decades before the Treaty of Union, apply in Scotland? The answer is that it can't, no matter for how long it may have been applied in that way. And this truth has been re-established in successful legal challenges since the 1950s, as well as by a vote in Westminster in 2008. which reaffirmed the sovereignty of the Scottish people. Thank you very much, Alec, for that. That was your gift to us. So what does all that mean for us in the here and now? It means that it is for us to claim what is already ours. It means that it is in the sovereignty of the people that we will find the antidote to the present failure of a political system designed on the basis of old feudal notions of privilege and power. It means that the key to our future lies with the wealth of knowledge, talent, skill and ability, experience, wisdom, vision and imagination represented by our own people. This is the wealth that can replace the intellectual and moral poverty of a system in which a handful of career politicians design national policies based on their own critically limited access to the vast knowledge available, their own self-interest, and they're subservient to their friends and patrons. I'm going to skip ahead here because this has gone on long enough. And so, as we look to independence to free us from a truly feudal and oppressive regime, with this resolution, we also look to the potential waiting to be explored and developed within that notion of the sovereignty of the people. This is what we mean by pathways that convert the sovereignty of the Scottish people into a living democratic system of which we can be proud. For surely we can create mechanisms by which those in power may be held to account by the people whose power they represent. And just as importantly, systems through which the people are not just canvassed in the policy making of those at the top, but involved in the exchange of information and ideas, discussion and debate. In fact, in the whole process of arriving at the best informed, best designed policies, reforms and innovations that can be achieved. We might design sitting conventions in a new expression of a historic Scottish tradition, or citizens' assemblies, or a juried second chamber, or all of these. But this is what really constitutes restoring the sovereignty of the Scottish people. And by passing this resolution, as I hope unanimously, we can also take the first step towards saying that Alba is not just a more democratic party, a more trustworthy party, a party that listens to its members and is in touch with the people of Scotland. It's a party with a vision for the kind of Scotland that not only answers all our present dismay and righteous anger, but inspires hope and passion for our future, and which itself embodies the same vision of Scottish popular sovereignty and the same enduring Scottish values that we all here hold so dear.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah. I now call Josh Robertson from the Highland Local Authority Campaign Unit. Josh.
Féisceann Mamo Carichin, conference, how refreshing is it to be at a pro-independence party's conference that actually talks about independence? In conference with this motion, not only are we talking about independence, but we are putting the building blocks in place to achieve independence that will be led by this party. Conference, this committee will make sure that the length and breadth of Scottish expertise is included in the dream that we are going to make Scotland in the future. This is going to be a grassroots-led campaign. This is going to be a grassroots-led committee to make sure that the independence movement is still grassroots-led. This is not going to be a top-down dictated policy. This is not going to be a top-down donated independence. This is not going to be an independence dictated by a parliament that decides to erode 50% of our population's rights. This is going to be a nation This is going to be a nation that supports all, has equality for all, justice for all, and that can only start with independence. But before we get to Independence Conference, we actually have to plan for it. We have to dream for it. Please support this motion. Start dreaming, start planning, and let's get on the road to independence. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, George. There are no cards in against, so can I ask that the motion number 4 on establishment of an Independence and Democracy Committee is passed by acclaim. Thank you, Conference. We now move to motion number 5 on council tax and the council funding crisis, to be proposed by Councillor John Letford and seconded by Councillor Michelle Ferns. John Letford, please.
Thanks, Taz. John Letford, Councillor, Glasgow, member of Glasgow LACU. Conference. Council funding is in crisis. Councils are dealing with a legacy of year-on-year cuts to their budgets from the Scottish Government. Across Scotland, we see increases in fees and charges on open facilities, such as libraries and community centres, filthy streets, food lines in the snow, and just this last week in Glasgow, children being fed at a nighttime soup kitchen. I've been a Glasgow City Councillor for 9 years. In all that time, I have never known a rising or even a standstill budget. Meanwhile, councils must run a balanced budget. So every year we have to make cuts to achieve that balance. In Scotland's largest city, this has been very challenging. But I am sure that most of the other councillors in the room who come from all over the country will be able to tell you a similar tale. Holyrood funds roughly 80% of council budgets, with the remaining 20% coming from locally set council tax and assorted fees and charges. So the choices of central government directly impact the service provision of local government. Put simply, colleagues, local government is not a priority for the Scottish Government. Their priorities lie elsewhere. Meanwhile, councils are left to deliver services in communities with ever-decreasing resources. Conference, you can't get Scandinavian-style social services from American levels of taxation. The COVID pandemic has turbocharged this process. Councils have lost millions in fees, charges and other income streams and have had to cut their cloth to meet budgets. Therefore, as a matter of necessity and emergency, the Scottish Government must engage immediately with councils and work with them to redress any and all budget gaps resulting from the effects of the pandemic. This brings me to council tax, colleagues. Council tax is a regressive instrument for delivering local services, introduced by the Tories in 1993 to replace the hated poll tax. It is a limited banding system based on outdated property values, a blunt and unfair Tory tax with inequality baked in. With 8 bands, A to H, councils set band D, with the other bands being a fixed proportion of the band D rate. The proportions are set out in law, whilst the banding for each property is decided according to market value of the property in 1991. The Commonweal, the Resolution Foundation, the IPPR and the Adam Smith Institute have all called for council tax to be abolished. Why? As I said, because it's regressive. In 2016, the Commission on Local Tax Reform found that the poorest households faced an effective tax rate 5 times that of the richest households. The Scottish Government enacted some reforms in 2017, but the CLTR concluded that, quote, it would require the tax on the highest value homes to be 15 times the tax on the lowest value homes to make the council tax proportionate. This did not happen, and council tax remains and is profoundly regressive. It's regressive because the bands are too wide. They are not directly proportional to the value of properties. It's regressive because the values based on those 1991 prices do not correspond with variable house price inflation across Scotland. And it's regressive because in regions where properties fall primarily into lower bands, it produces, as a consequence, higher council tax bills. Colleagues, council tax penalises poverty and ensures that the least well-off continue to pay a larger share. It's grossly unfair and unfit for purpose. Conference, this policy fully within the legislative competence of the Scottish Government, who have been threatening to tackle the inequality at the heart of the council tax, but like a structured plan for achieving our country's independence, we wait and we wait and we wait for them to act. Well, Alba should not wait. We call on the Scottish Government to abolish council tax, to show us their proposals for replacement, and if they haven't done the necessary work, Alba should commit to join any cross-party working group to consider viable, workable alternatives. I would ask that, if this motion is passed, the leadership convene an expert panel to report back to an appropriate Alba body outlining the policy of local government funding, outlining a policy of local government funding which is both fair, efficient and progressive. Conference, Alba is a bold, new, exciting departure from the timid Fiat policies of the past 7 years. We have the leadership, we have the team and we have the activists. We are now the party of hope, the party of social justice and being no doubt the party of independence. Please support the motion.
Thank you very much indeed, John. I now call Councillor Michelle Founds to second the motion. Michelle.
Thank you very much, Conference. Well, how do you follow a speech like that? It doesn't leave me much to say. I suppose, other than to point out probably what everyone already knows, council tax was an abomination that was rushed in I suppose, to make up for the abomination of the poll tax that was forced on Scotland, and those questions in terms of how they would affect the most vulnerable and the poorest in our society weren't asked then. Council tax was frozen while these questions were ignored again, and now it's quite rightly raising itself again. As John said, council tax is a regressive tax. What I might see in cities like mine is where people are on the same band, but somebody who lives in a house that's £200,000 might pay 2% of a percentage of their income towards council tax, where someone living in a private rented flat might well be paying 15% of their income on the same on the same band. It is regressive. It is unfair. Council tax pays for all of the essential services that we rely on every day. We all hear about council tax and we tend to think it means our parks and our cutting our grass. But what your council tax pays for is your teachers, your carers, your cleaners, your support staff in schools, your dinner ladies, your janitors, your street cleaners. In other words, all of the essential jobs, all of the jobs that during the pandemic that are the lowest paid and the lowest status in our society, of course, but the jobs that, if they're not done, that our cities and our communities cannot function. The most vulnerable in our society can't be looked after, care visits can't be done, hubs, educational hubs for kids during the summer can't be opened. Council tax, as well as being, I'm sorry, I've not got a speech, as you can see, I'm just speaking from the heart here. Council tax in cities like Glasgow, and I know this will be, it'll be different for different communities across Scotland, but I can only speak for the city that I live in. The city that I live in means, which has 600,000 people, but probably about 750,000 people live on a daily basis coming in and out of Glasgow. Lots and lots of people who don't live in Glasgow using Glasgow's services. Most of the high earners in Glasgow don't actually live in the city boundaries. They'll find themselves living on the nice leafy areas on the outskirts. So they don't particularly contribute to Glasgow's council tax, but they certainly use its services, as well as having museum venues that we're very proud of in Glasgow, and they do have a national significance. Unfortunately, they don't come with national money and national funding. As well as that, because of the political message and what the Scottish Government are responsible for, quite often council funding will come with ring fencing. So you'll get money, but you'll be told what you're allowed to spend it on and what you're not allowed to spend it on. And that usually that'll be things that the Scottish Government tend to take the hit for in the press. Health, education, things that people think the Scottish Government are responsible for rather than local authorities. That means that cities can't make their own decisions about targeting the resource where the need is. And that's really, really important, because otherwise the things that John was talking about, And he was saying about kids being in food lines in the dead of night, on a school night in Glasgow, because they don't have enough to eat. What most of you probably won't know here is most of the people in that queue are working. They're not on benefits, they're not homeless, they don't have addictions, they don't have alcohol problems, they're the working poor. In 2021 in Scotland, some of them are a household with 2 people working that can't afford to feed their kids, can't afford to put the kettle on, can't afford to cook their dinner, don't want to go to food banks because they can only get dried food, and some of them can't put their electricity on to cook the food. This sounds like something from the past, but it's not. It's not. It's happening in Scotland every day, today. Those lines in Glasgow will be there tonight. People in Scotland that are working that can't afford to pay for their dinner and can't feed their children. That's none of us should be comfortable with that. That disgusts me. I think it disgusts everybody in this room. We all know the reasons why we need independence. Thank you. We all know the reasons why we need independence, but we all should know the reasons why it's incumbent upon our national government of whatever flavour to support our cities, to support our citizens, to stop pooling, centralising all power and all decisions to themselves without looking at the different circumstances that cities face. I'm not going to go on because I probably said too much. Please support the motion. It's a fantastic motion, and Scotland needs a change.
Thank you very much indeed, Michelle. There are no cards in against, so motion number 5, council tax and the council funding crisis. Can I ask conference if the motion is passed by acclaim? Thank you very much, and what a great opening session that has been. Now, we've got lots of fringe events and political information events coming up, and I'd like to invite our Interim General Secretary, Chris McElhinney, to talk you through them before you have a brief break before attending. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just fixing this microphone. I've seen Josh Robertson batter out of position earlier on. So it's good to see the passion. Now, we're going to have a break. The next session will start at 1:30 p.m. And the first resolution, which I know there will be a lot of interest in, is in women inequality. So if you can make sure you're back here for 1:30, and then we'll go through the rest of the afternoon's resolutions. One point of order: if you've submitted a resolution, can you please remember to fill in your speaker's card? And don't assume that we know you're in the hall, because it's difficult for us to see everyone. So if you've submitted a resolution and you're seconding the resolution, please also fill in your speaker's card and pass it up. And if you wish to speak in favour of any of this afternoon's resolutions, whether you're a first-time speaker at any party conference, please fill in a card, put it up. Everyone will give you a really warm welcome. Now, as I say, we're going to have lunch until 1:30, so if you're not from Greenock, just some logistics. If you want to leave, get some fresh air, go for a bite to eat, some coffees, drinks, etc., you've got 2 simple choices. If you go out and you go left, you can go back along the street, there's a few places there, or if you turn right, there's a shopping centre which has got lots of cafes, etc., or if I imagine some of you maybe want to go to the pub. If you turn left, that's the direction to head in. There's plenty of pubs in Greenock that will serve you, apart from 1 or 2 of you, I should say. So on the fringe events, and this is an important point, so we have political information and fringes. The political information is for members only, so if you're a visitor, press delegate, etc., you can't attend those because they're information education sessions for our members only, and they'll be in the hall at the back left where the stalls are. Now, there's a capacity of about 80 to 100 there, so it will be first come, first served, and that will be a session on the local authority elections. So if you're really interested in standing to be elected as an Alba councillor, and I'm confident there will be quite a lot of them come May next year, then please go to that session. And also, if you're interested in campaigning, go to that. When you're in there, you'll also see there are leaflets in there. So if you're here on behalf of a LACU, there are boxes of leaflets. There's about 2,500 leaflets in each box. Take as many of them as you want back home, get your street stalls up and running, start recruiting members to the party and for the cause. There is a fringe by Jim Sillars called Realities and Opportunities, and it will be on Jim's book. Now, unfortunately, there's only a capacity of about 60 can attend that, That's just because of the COVID world we live in. That's the capacity we could secure in the hall. So if you want to attend Jim Sillars' Fringe event, it'll be first come, first served. You would come back, if you're on the balcony, please come back down from the balcony. And if you're in this main hall, you would be heading out towards the door, and stewards will direct you to the right and up the stairs. Anyone with accessibility requirements, please let one of the stewards know and we can assist you. But that's a capacity of 60 only, so first come, first served for that. And if we can see everyone back in this main hall, please, for the Women and Equalities debate, that will start at 1:30 p.m. So thanks everyone for your attendance so far.